Aren't they interested in making evaluations about whether you are genuinely a team or whether privately you dislike each other intensely?
Look, we're like any other group of politicians. We have able men and women, all with ambition, but we have been remarkably united over 11 and a half years. I mean, I look at Bob Hawke and Paul Keating. Peter Costello and I have behaved in a totally gentlemanly fashion towards each other compared to those two. I mean, give us a break. Come on.
I'm just playing with those images, Mr. Howard.
Yeah.
You also said in your party, where you've always said that you'll only stay for as long as your party wants you, you also said in your party room today, as I understand it, you added, and in the best interests of the party.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't...
Oh, no, I've used that for him. But look, can I just say something about that? I've given a lot of thought to this. My position in relation to the next election, and this is what I'll be telling the Australian people, is very simple. If the Australian people are good enough and kind enough to re-elect me again, there are a lot of things I want to do, and I would want to approach those things with enormous energy. But I would expect well into my term, and after those things have been implemented and bedded down, I would probably, certainly form the view well into my term that it would make sense for me to retire. And in those circumstances, I would expect, although it would be a matter for the party to determine, that Peter would take over. Now, that's the honest position, and I'm not going to say anything else to the Australian people. I mean, I've noticed Steve Bracks and Peter Beattie looked their electorates in the eye and said, oh, you know, we're going to stay 3 years. 12 months and Beattie's gone, a little longer than 12 months and Bracks is gone. Now, I'm not going to do that. Some people have said to me, oh, why don't you say to the people you're going to stay 3 years, even if you may not be certain you're going to stay 3 years. So I thought this through, and what I'm saying to the Australian people is I want to be re-elected. There are a lot of things I want to do for them, but well into my term, I would come to the conclusion that it would be in the interests of everybody if I retired, and in those circumstances I would expect Peter to take over, but that would be a matter for the party. Now, that is the honest truth, and I think most of your viewers believe it would be the case.
I think
given my long period in politics.
I think they've probably already made the assumption, Mr. Howard, but what you're saying is that at some point in the next 3 years, if you're re-elected, you will retire from politics, and probably Peter Costello will become your replacement. So in a sense, for the first time, you are saying to voters that at this election they'll be voting not for one Prime Minister but for two Prime Ministers, the second probably being Peter Costello.
They'll be voting for a team, and I think that's good. I think actually this election, if it's a contest between teams as well as a contest between Howard and Rudd, is a good thing. So they'll be voting for Howard, Costello, Downer, Turnbull, Brough, so the list goes on, versus Rudd, Gillard, Peter Garrett.
But as I also said...
Wayne Swan as Treasurer instead of Peter Costello, really?
But what I also said, Mr. Howard, is that you're going to be asking people to vote for two Prime Ministers, you and Peter Costello. Well,
I'm asking people to vote for somebody who levels with them. I don't think Steve Bracks and Peter Beattie levelled with their respective publics. I mean, what changed their circumstances between their elections and when they retired? I mean, the glib thing is to say to people you're going to serve 3 years even though you know in your heart that may not be the case. Well, I'm not going to embrace the glib option. That was the approach taken by others. It's not the approach that I'm going to take.
So it's not an acknowledgement on your part that your leadership has been weakened, that your leadership is a factor in this election campaign, and you're assuring people that you're not going to be around for the full 3 years?
No, Kerry, it's not. I mean, I have been Prime Minister of this country now for 11 and a half years. I am the second longest serving Prime Minister in Australia's history. Frankly, I love the job. It still stimulates and energises me. There's a lot of things I want to do for the Australian people, and that's why I would hope that they might be kind enough to re-elect me, because I want to serve them. And I won't find it easy if I am re-elected to retire. I won't find it the least bit easy, because I'm very committed to this job, and I will not like leaving it.
Well, let me just put this point to you, Mr.
Everything comes to an end. I mean, everything must, and
it does.
Well, of course it does. Even this interview, and we must, we must be honest and candid and adult about it, because otherwise you get this ridiculous situation where a bloke can never retire without, in some way, having misled the public. Well, I'm not going to do that.
Last question, Mr. Howard. This also is a message from you to the electors of Bennelong, your own electorate. And you're saying to them that if they elect you, if they put you back in the Parliament this time, you're not going to be there for the full 3 years. At some point in the 3 years, there'll be a by-election. Can you see the potential negative in that for them?
Well, the position in relation to that is, I mean, I'm very, very upfront. I mean, whether, depending on when I went, whether there would be a by-election or not, is something that I would determine then, because it has not been unknown for people in those circumstances to serve out their term. It would depend entirely on circumstances.
John Howard, thanks very much for talking with us.
You're very welcome.